the Romans wanted to conquer Britain fully, but their mission failed because of some people named Picts. Residing in northern Britain, the Picts proved to be a fierce resistance as they used guerrilla tactics to defeat the Romans. After 20 years, Rome has finally given orders to eliminate all the Picts by any means necessary. In the beginning, a wounded Roman man named Dius is seen running in the mountains after escaping from the Picts. The scene shifted to 2 weeks ago when Dius was appointed as a second-in-command on a Roman outpost, and there, Picts attacked them. Led by Vortix and Aaron, the Picts killed all Romans, and in the end, only Dius was left. The Picts didn't kill him as he knew the Pictish language, and he could prove useful to them. Dius was presented to their leader, Gorlican, who forced him to tell them any information regarding the Roman forces. Dius refused to tell them anything, so they started torturing him. After some days of being apprehended at the Pictish outpost, Dius successfully runs away on foot, and then the movie shifts to the present, where he is seen running in the mountains, wounded. On the other hand, Britannia's governor Agricola sends a messenger to the 9th Legion's general, Virulus. Virulus decides to meet Agricola, and upon meeting him, he comes to know that the governor is planning to eliminate Picts. For this, he orders Virulus to defeat them with his 9th Legion army. Virulus initially refuses to sacrifice his men, but then he agrees, and the governor provides him with a female mute scout named Atane, who will lead him to the Picts' outpost. Virulus then unites his army, and the journey begins toward the Picts' outpost, directed by Atane. On their way, Atane sees Dius running from 3 Picts, and she tells this to Virulus, whose army kills those 3 Picts and saves Dius. Dius tells them he was second in command in one of the Romans' outposts, but then his group was attacked by Picts. They take Dius with them, and the general introduces him to some of his colleagues at night. The next morning, the journey again begins, and on their way, they pass through some mountains in the forest. Right before them is fog, and Atane takes the courage to move forward and see if there is any danger. As she moves into the fog with her horse, a tree falls to the ground blocking Romans' way, and they all immediately understand that they have been trapped. Virulus orders his army to gather and form a defensive line to protect themselves from the surroundings, as the attack can be from any side. It is revealed that Atane, who was directing them, was a traitor, and she led the 9th Legion army to this specific point where Pict's army was already waiting for them. The Picts attacked the 9th Legion army right after she left to look around. As the soldiers wait for the attack, suddenly, some flaming rocks fall from all sides, which destroys the defense line of the soldiers. Following this, the Picts army attacks the 9th Legion army, and every soldier is killed in a matter of minutes. The Picts leave after taking Virulus with them thinking that everyone is killed. However, there are some survivors left under the dead bodies, and these survivors include Dius, Bothos, Thax, Brick, Macros, Leonidas, and the cook Tarek. The group of 7 decides to save Virulus from the Picts, and for this, they continue their journey toward the Picts' outpost, keeping themselves hidden from the eyes of Atane, who is accompanied by Gorlican. On their way, they see some other Roman companions who survived the attack, but they are killed by Atane and her men before the group of 7 can save them. After that, the group takes refuge in a cave and collects some mushrooms to eat. However, Tarek tells them that some mushrooms can be poisonous. He throws away the poisonous mushrooms, and the group eats the remaining mushrooms. Then Dius asks everyone to introduce themselves with their names and origin, and that's how the day passes. The next day, Virulus is presented to the leader Gorlican, and Gorlican tells him how Atane came to them. Her villagers refused to accept the Romans' rule, and the Romans destroyed them after raping Eaton's mother repeatedly until she herself begged for death. Atane, forced to see all this, was then raped by Roman soldiers, and they cut her tongue. After that, she came to Gorlican, and that's how she got trained. Today she finally proved loyal to his leader and brought Virulus, the leader of the 9th Legion army, to them. Meanwhile, Dius' group reaches the Picts' outpost but decides not to attack them now as it will be dangerous to trigger them in daylight. They plan to attack them at night, and when night falls, the 7 soldiers attack the guards on duty, killing them and successfully finding Virulus, who is tied with chains. Dias and others try freeing him from the chains but cannot do so as several Picts soldiers arrive on horses. Thax gets into Gorlikan's son's camp, and before he yells, Thax kills the kid and flees. Virulus orders Dias and others to run away before Picts can kill them, and having no other option, they have to leave Virulus there and run away. The next morning, Gorlikan finds his son's dead body and is saddened to see him. After burning his dead body, he frees Virulus and puts him against Etain in a battle of swordsmanship. Virulus, who is already wounded and tired, can't bear the attacks, and Etain kills him with a spear through his heart. On the other hand, 9th Legion survivors are in the mountains going towards the south as they know Gorlikan must have sent his men after them. In between, Dias suggests they move toward the north as their journey toward the south can easily be expected. In the meantime, Gorlikan sends his army, ordering them to behead every 9th Legion and bring back their heads to him. As the army is about to leave, Etain takes some of Virulus' ash with her. As they continue their journey towards the south, Etain realizes that the 9th Legion survivors are not heading towards the south, rather, they are trying to trick them by moving towards the north. Hence, she leads her army toward the north, and as night falls, they all stop to rest. As they sit near a fire, Aaron gives Etain some blue woad, and she mixes Virulus' ash in it. After that, Etain, Aaron, and Vortix paint their faces with the blue woad, which indicates that they would rather die than fail. Leo kills a deer, and they all drink its blood and eat its meat without cooking it, as there are no resources. Unfortunately, the Picts army sees the dead deer in their way and understands that the legions are nearby. The group of 7 also senses Picts' presence nearby, and they run. However, Tarek's foot breaks while running, and he screams, attracting all the Picts to their place. Dias suggests his companions climb the mountain before them to save them, as Picts' horses can't follow them this way. The group follows his suggestion and climbs the mountain. However, Etain's men descend from their horses and follow them upwards. The group eventually reaches a cliff with a lake below, and Dias asks them all to jump into the water. As the group jumps, Tarek, who is running with a broken foot, gets killed by the Pictish army, and all others are saved who jumped into the lake. During this process, Macros and Thax are separated from the others due to the fast flow of the lake. On the other side of the lake, Etain is also present, but she doesn't attack them because of the fast flow of the lake, which doesn't let her army cross it. Now Dias plans to attack Etain's group at night, and when night falls, Dias and Brick attack her group. In the meantime, Bodhos stays with Leo, who has fallen sick after jumping into the cold water of the lake. Dias and Brick successfully kill 2 soldiers, but they can't find Etain. Dias comes to know from a soldier that Gorlikan has sent his men because one of the legions had killed his son. He also warns him about the attack on his companions left behind on the other side of the lake. Surprisingly, just like Dias had the plan to kill his enemy at night, Etain also followed a similar kind of plan, and by the time Dias and Brick were fighting with the Pictish army, Etain had attacked Leo and Bodhos. Leo is killed when Etain throws her spear at him, and it passes through his mouth. Then she beheads him and keeps the head with herself. Meanwhile, Aaron throws an arrow at Bodhos, injuring him but doesn't kill him, and the Pictish army flees. In the meantime, Dias and Brick reach to Bothos's rescue and take out the arrow from his foot. Dias encourages him not to lose hope, and the trio then continues its journey away from the lake because they are afraid that Etain might attack them later as well. Cut to the next morning's scene where Macros and Thax are being followed by some wolves. As they run, Thax falls, and Macros returns to help him. However, Thax betrays him and cuts his leg's tendon, and leaves him there so that all the wolves shift their attention to him. He then cleverly flees from the scene, saving his life. The trio find a hut in which they take refuge. Suddenly the hut owner, who is a girl named Ariane, arrives and gets scared. Dias calms her down, telling her that they intend her no harm and are here for food and shelter. Ariane then treats Bothos's wounds and provides them with delicious food at night too. Though Brick is suspicious of Ariane, Dias tells him to eat the food as it is delicious. Then they all sleep, and the next morning, when Ariane collects some fish for their breakfast, the Picts arrive on their horses, and she hides the trio under her floorboards. Etain asks Ariane if Roman soldiers arrived here, and she says they didn't. She proceeds to check Ariane's hut but finds no one and then decides to kill Ariane, but Vortix tells her that killing a witch like Ariane can be a curse for Picts. Etain leaves her, and then the army flees. Dias then comes out of the hut and apologizes to Ariane for causing danger to her, and tells her that he will soon leave with his friends. Ariane tells him to stay until his friend heals his wounds, and if he leaves now, Etain will surely murder the three of them. Then she tells him that she is a Pict but was considered an outcast when the community blamed her for witchcraft. She has a scar on her face which indicates that she is the abandoned one who is forced to live alone for the rest of her life. At night, Dias thinks about Ariane who has helped them as an angel being from the group of devils. Brick also apologizes to Ariane for misjudging her. During the night, Dias and Ariane talk, which brings them close, and the next morning when Dias leaves, Ariane is sad. Later, Ariane finds a small wood sculpture of a horse that Dias made for her last night, and she gets teared up seeing Dias' only memory. The trio then finally reaches a Roman outpost, but the outpost is empty, whereas the group was expecting help from the soldiers. They are confused to find no one, and then Dias finds a message that says Emperor Hadrian has given orders to form a new defensive line to the south. That means their leader Agricola has given up the ground they were trying to occupy. In the end, the Romans fled from the place where Dias' group had been struggling to eliminate the Picts. In a state of disappointment, the trio suddenly sees Etain with her warriors approaching them, and the three decide to fight this time instead of running. The fight begins, and the trio kills some men of the rival army, but then Etain, Vortix, and Aaron give them tough competition. Vortix fights with Bothos, whereas an arrow thrown by Aaron injures Brick. He immediately removes the arrow, shoves it inside Aaron's eye, and kills her. Unfortunately, Etain throws her spear, which passes through Brick, and he dies while killing another Pict soldier. Now Dias battles with Etain, and in the meantime, Bothos successfully kills Vortix. Eventually, Dias also kills Etain, and the fight results in the Picts' defeat as they all have been killed, with Dias and Bothos as the only Roman survivors. At night, Dias and Bothos sit and plan to arrive at Agricola's place and meet other soldiers. Suddenly they feel someone's presence around, and surprisingly it's Thax. Thax is happy to reunite with them, and Dias tells him they fought Picts for nothing as the Romans have given up the ground. Thax is not affected by this news. Instead, he tells them they should be happy as the three of them have finally made it alive. The next morning when the trio leaves, Dias, who is skeptical of Thax, asks him what happened to Gorlican's son, to which Thax replies that he doesn't know anything. Thax understands that Dias knows he killed Gorlican's son, so he thinks of a plan to save himself. After some time, the group sees Roman's wall and fort under construction. Bothos rushes toward it happily. Dias tries to stop him, but Bothos is excited, so he doesn't listen, and the Roman soldiers think he is a Pict. Unfortunately, they throw an arrow at Bothos, and the poor soldier dies, leaving Dias devastated. On the other hand, Thax threatens Dias not to reveal the fact he killed Gorlican's son, but Dias tells him because of Thax's one murder, Gorlican sent his entire army behind the Romans. Numerous Roman soldiers died because of what Thax did, so he will have to answer for it. Hearing this, Thax starts fighting with Dias, and Dias chokes him to death. Though Dias is the only survivor after an extended period of war, he is saddened by his companions' deaths. He lifts up Bothos' dead body on his shoulder and enters the outpost. When Agricola meets Dias, he expresses his pleasure to see him and then asks him to go to another room where he will be served food. As Dias leaves, Agricola's daughter, Drusilla, tells him that Dias can be a great risk for them as Virulus has died with his entire 9th Legion army as well. This news will cause other tribes to attack them, so if they kill Dias right now, they will basically hide the truth, and no one will know that Agricola asked Virulus to fight against Picts with his 9th Legion army. Agricola agrees, and to save his reputation, he decides to kill Dias. As Dias eats his food, Drusilla enters the room and serves Dias some wine. Suddenly, the soldiers present in the room attack Dias, but he defeats them all. However, Dias is wounded in his thigh during the fight, and then he leaves the outpost after hitting Drusilla, who goes unconscious. Dias eventually reaches Ariane on his horse, and as he reaches her hut, he falls from his horse. Seeing this, Ariane rushes to him, and an injured Dias tells her that his life is in her hands once again.